Hello, it's layperson Lisa with a reflection on the readings from the 20th Sunday of Ordinary Time. How are you responding to the invitation of the King? In today's first reading, we hear from the book of Proverbs that there is a great banquet being prepared that is being carefully, the meat is being carefully selected, the wine is being, the best will be served. And this table is prepared for the King, prepared for the people who they describe in the first reading as simple. And that's us. We're invited to this great banquet of the King, to sit with him, to be in relationship with him, to spend time with him at this great banquet. And as a result, we become more mature in our relationship with him. We become more mature in our spiritual journey so that we may turn away from the foolishness of the world and have a greater understanding and maturity as we grow in intimacy with the King. And then in the second reading, St. Paul also tells us to not live as foolish people, but as wise people. He tells us to make the most out of every opportunity. And it made me think of time and how this has been coming up a lot for me lately, in that people sharing stories, and it caused me to reflect on my own use of time. And years ago, I was very possessive of my time. I would become irritated if somebody interrupted me because this was my time and I did not plan for this, and I did not have the desire to open my heart to interruptions of my time. But yet that is not who God has called me to today. As I have grown in maturity, as I have spent time with him at his banquet table in prayer, I have come to understand, and I've been revealed this wisdom, that my time is God's time, and that I don't have my own time. I have an open heart that allows me to spend my time how God is calling me to. But it took a lot of time, keyword time. It took a lot of time spent with Jesus in order for me to have this transformation, to have this understanding that it is not my time, it is God's time. And it comes down to stewardship. Everything that we have, every gift that we have, and a great gift is time, comes from God. And we are called to give that time back to him by loving others, by being open to interruptions, because that could be who God wants us to minister to at that time. Or maybe that's somebody that he's sending to us to minister to us and what is going on in our lives. St. Paul also talks about how not to continue in ignorance, but to try to understand what is the will of the Lord. And this is another theme that has been coming up for me lately, which is the virtue of prudence, of being cautious, be in a God-led way. And I find myself just a few days ago I felt like I had to defend myself and explain why I did this. But was that really necessary? No. Did I really need to say those things? No. Did I need to respond? No. But yet I did. So I did not act with prudence in that manner. And another situation that I just experienced was I said a comment that I thought that was very funny. But was it necessary? No. Did it bring charity or value to the conversation? No. And oftentimes we're called to be prudent, to not respond, to not say unnecessary things, to not do unnecessary actions, because those are not things of love. Sometimes they're a way to defend ourselves, sometimes in an unnecessary way. After the fact, I felt like God was calling me to be humble, and no, I shouldn't have said those things. And it didn't add any value to the conversation, because I didn't need to defend myself and why I did this, because God knows why I did what I did. And I felt like it was the right thing to do. But also, sometimes people will make comments as a way to garner a reaction. And we're called to be prudent in those situations as well, and not respond and not react. And that's what St. Paul is telling us to do, to no longer live a foolish life, to no longer make foolish comments in conversations, to no longer, but rather to understand, to be charitable in what we say, be filled with the Spirit, and allow us to be vessels of God. And in the responsorial psalm today, we hear, taste and see the goodness of the Lord. And that is what happens when we spend time with Him, when we grow in intimacy with Him. We are able to taste and see His goodness, especially through our trials, through our struggles, through situations that maybe in the past we turned inward on. But when we spend time with Jesus, the King, at His banquet, in prayer, then we can just taste and see His goodness in situations, be filled with His love, His joy, His peace, and not react, but to be prudent. In today's gospel, Jesus tells us to eat His flesh and drink His blood. He is telling us to consume Him, to allow Him to enter into us. And so many conversations that I hear are of people who are consumed with situations in their lives, situations in which they desire to be different, which they desire to change, but they cannot, yet they let these things consume them. But Jesus does not want us to be consumed with anything but Him, in the sense that He is inviting us to consume Him, to allow Him to enter into us. And that is how we can become closer to Him, become more intimate with Him in the sacrament of the Eucharist, in prayer, in living a life that is based on the Beatitudes, that is lived sacramentally, a sacramentally based life, a prayer-based life, a Christ-filled life. We are called to be like Jesus, and one way that He can give us this strength, this grace, is to enter into us through His body and blood. And when we come to Him with an open heart, when we answer His call, His invitation with open arms, an open heart, an open mind, it allows us to have an open disposition. And that is what we need in order to grow in intimacy with Him, in order to receive all of the healing graces, all of the powerful graces, all of the supernatural graces that He desires to give to us through His body and His blood, which He shed on the cross for us. Something else that's been coming up a lot lately is how people kind of struggle with the timelessness of God. And so I always think of it in this way, that Jesus died on the cross, knowing everything that you would do, every sin that you would commit. And yet He still chose to die for you. Even though it's 2,000 years later, He is timeless. God is timeless. He lives outside of time. And because of this timeliness, we can console Him on the cross when we have this open disposition, when we are answering His invitation to the banquet. And so I invite you to reflect on that question. How are you responding to the invitation to the banquet of the King?